right out of here.
Get that envelop on.
So we'll see what Bob can put together. Again, Legacy Open champion just a couple of weeks ago. He's a skilled Legacy player. Not the first time we've seen him on the bright lights here at SCG Live, so this should be fun to watch. But he has certainly embraced Treasure Cruise, and it's hard not to. Got a lot of fetch lands, got a lot of ways to put stuff in the graveyard. A little bit of anti-synergy, I guess, with Deathrite Shaman, but Deathrite Shaman's so good, it's probably worth it.
There's also an idea of phases of the game, right? You know, early on, the Deathrite Shaman's really powerful. Later on in the game, do you need it for mana? Probably not. You're probably doing other things with your mana on a lot of turns rather than removing cards and exiling the Deathrite Shaman. And so your graveyard will naturally fill itself back up, or your opponent will cooperate, filling up their graveyard, which gives you Deathrite Shaman food. And then you can cast the Treasure Cruise later on in the game. So even though they're both taxing your graveyard, I don't think they're intrinsically at odds with one another.
Flooded Strand will put Bob down to 19, search up a tropical island, and now Deathrite Shaman has joined the party. So Caleb probably has a decent idea of what he's up against now, which is clearly some sort of Deathrite Shaman deck, as here's a Wasteland to take care of the tropical island.
Keep in mind that people made the same critiques about Deathrite Shaman and Tarmogoyf in the same deck,
This is true.
we don't question that anymore.
That's just a thing that people will be doing for some time now.
Yeah.
See what Bob can do on his second turn.
Main deck, Relics, and Merfolk. I'm a big fan.
I like that. I like that, actually.
Makes a lot of sense.
Wasteland will be removed from Deathrite Shaman. Wasteland will be tapped, and now it's Tarmogoyf.
Relic, Relic.
Here's a Wasteland. There's an Aether Vial. See if this is going to resolve, and it looks like it will. So, that's in there. Tarmogoyf sitting now at a 1-2. Wasteland's going to take care of that Wasteland. And now here's a Delver.
This is some Legacy 101 here. Both players wastelanding each other while keeping alternate sources of mana in play, whether it be Deathrite Shaman or Aether Vial.
Vial's going to tick up to 1.
And we are just getting the die orientated the right way.
Yes. It is now good to go for our good friend Tarmogoyf. Just a boring 1-2 right now. I probably won't stay that way for long. Here's a Mutavault, another juicy Wasteland target.
This is one of the big issues with Merfolk is when it does not have Aether Vial, there's a lot of colorless lands in the deck. So if Bob is able to find a source of mana next turn and can use that alongside the Deathrite Shaman to take care of the Aether Vial, Caleb is likely to be stranded with a bunch of double blue spells.
Looks like Deathrite Shaman wants to draw for Bob. You can see Bob's hand's a little bit awkward right now. He has Deathrite Shaman, 2 copies of Abrupt Decay, and a Treasure Cruise.
Very generous of you to say a little awkward.
I like to try to be nice.
3 uncastables, one of which taxes the graveyard, and alongside Tarmogoyf and the other Deathrite Shaman.
It's a little awkward, a little bit.
This is not how Bob would draw it up.
Probably
in
not.
an ideal world.
Bob going to remove that Mutavault to cast other Deathrite Shaman. In comes Delver, Secret and Tarmogoyf, just for 2 points of damage. Looks like the Vial may tick up to 2. Yes, it does.
That is the flashpoint for this deck. A lot of 2s. Although Caleb's list is a little more 3-dense than most Merfolk lists. 4 copies of Marrow Reejerey alongside 4 copies of True Name Nemesis.
That's a good spot to be. Of course, if Bob is able to draw, well, I guess he doesn't need to draw a color source from hand because he has 2 Deathrites in play now, and he has Abrupt Decay in his hand. So, you know, the graveyard interaction is going to be a little bit interesting here. You see Ponder is the card that's revealed to the Delver Secrets. But I think he's just going to immediately remove, and probably just Abrupt Decay this. Okay, he's actually going to go with a Ponder.
This is a slightly greedier play. If he finds a land, this is awesome. If he does not, it's potentially a disaster.
Yeah, and he did not find a land. 2 Force Wolves and a Tarmogoyf, and he's going to shuffle right away. As you mentioned, if he does find a land, this works out beautifully because then he can play the land, be it a fetch land, search up some mana, activate Deathrite Shaman, remove a land, use the mana and Abrupt Decay the Vial. If I was in Bob's spot, I would have just destroyed the Vial.
Exactly. The upside of just getting rid of the Aether Vial this turn and straining Caleb with no permanence in play is much higher than, you know, what happens if you draw a land this turn. Because if you cast the Abrupt Decay, Caleb probably can't function for the remainder of the game. You probably cruise to a win. So I think that I would have ignored the Ponder this turn and just Abrupt Decayed the Vial.
Because my Ponder is going to be good next turn, too.
Exactly. Yes, it's unlikely, that you miss, but why even incur the risk?
Because in this instance, he did miss.
Yeah, and now Caleb gets to use the vial this turn and next turn. And if he's able to vial in a True Name Nemesis, well, now things get complicated.
Yeah, we have a different game then. So here's an attack for 5. I think Caleb was considering vialing something in here at this point. This is a rather weird game since neither player has a land in play.
This is a very legacy game.
It really is. I haven't watched Legacy for a little while. It's been about a month, but this is a very legacy game. Lord of Atlantis is going to slide through the vial.
No one with a land in play. Both players casting plenty of stuff.
Yep, still operating just fine.
Yeah.
Vial's going to tick up to 3. Caleb going to draw a card. It's a copy of Master of the Pearl Trident. So let's see what Caleb can do on this turn besides just pass the turn back, no attacks. No islands for it to walk on either.
Big problem here, too, is there's really no way for Caleb to get an Insectile Aberration off the table, with the exception of 2 copies of Umezawa's Jitte in the main deck.
Well, it's going to be tough to do with no lands.
Yes.
So there's
We're
that.
a ways away from that being a reality.
I would say, yeah, that's the case.
So even if he's able to, say, vial in a True Name Nemesis, he's still likely to lose the race just to the 3/2 flyer.
Well, here comes Tarmogoyf, and here comes Deathrite. Going to activate the vial, or at least try, but Bob is very quickly going to stifle the vial activation. So no vial for you. And again, with Bob having these Abrupt Decays in his hand, again, I'm still a little surprised that he's just not activating these Deathrites to Abrupt Decay the vial.
I don't mind the Stifle play that turn,
Okay.
because you just prevent Caleb from getting a blocker into play, which knocks him to 6, which now means your Insectile Aberration's lethal in 2 turns. And Caleb probably can't kill it.
There's True Name. There's just a simple attack for 3. Yeah, we're just going to go to the air.
Yeah, this is, like I said, I don't mind the Stifle just because of Caleb's life total. If he was at 20, I would just Abrupt Decay again, but has him in range, so just do this.
Pass the turn back. We'll hang over to Neufeld. And for Caleb, this has got to be a bit of a frustrating game.
Well, if they're spells, then they're not going to help you because you can't cast them.
And that's why he's going to concede the game. Bob Huang going to win game number 1 here over Caleb Neufeld. Sultai Delver up a game here over Merfolk as we do take a look at the sideboards. And I believe you have Merfolk in front of you, so I'll let you begin.
I do. 4 copies of Disrupting Shoal, 3 Pithy Needles, 3 Grafdigger's Cage, 3 copies of Dismember, and 2 Spellskites. So I like the Dismembers coming in. They're good against Tarmogoyf, good against Insectile Aberration, which are 2 cards that are a little rough on Merfolk sometimes. Besides that, he could bring in the Needles, but I think they're poor here. They do answer Deathrite Shaman, but he already has 3 copies of Relic of Patronus in his main deck, and there's only so much of that he can afford to have. Interestingly enough, Caleb has 4 copies of Force of Will alongside 3 Misdirections in his main deck. No copies of Daze. I think the Force of Will should probably be removed, but Misdirection could be good, especially against Abrupt Decay.
I've got 2 Spell Pierces, 2 Chills, a Vendilion Click, 3 Disfigure, 1 Dark Blast, 2 Golgari Charm, 2 Grafdigger's Cage, a Creeping Tar Pit, and a Null Rod. God love the Disfigures.
Disfigure seems great in this matchup. It's a cheap way of keeping the board clear, and you don't want the Lords to stack up. That's a big thing that you need to fight, so cheap answers is good. Besides that, I think not a whole lot strikes me as being great here.
Not really.
He could bring in the Null Rod. There's only 1 copy. He's playing against a deck with Aether Vial. Often the Merfolk decks have Umezawa's Jitte as well, if he's concerned about that. So I think bringing in 1 Null Rod is okay because when this deck doesn't have Aether Vial, it's pretty anemic for the most part. So even though the deck isn't that artifact dense, I'd probably still bring in the Null Rod.
All right, it's just a 1 of any.
Yeah, it's a 1 of. I wouldn't. If there were 2 copies, I would still only bring in 1. But I think it's good enough just because how good Aether Vial is in Merfolk.
Well, these players are going to shuffle up here. While we wait, we will talk about SCG Game Night. No longer is it every Wednesday. It's just every week in October. Pick whatever day you want.
Whenever you want to run it, Wednesday included. If you want to sign up, go over to StarCityGames.com/game night and get more information there. We send out a new kit every month. What you see in front of you right now is the October kit. We give out pins, foils, and this is just a promotion to get more casual, more local play in your store. So whatever format you want to run it as, if you want to run it sanctioned or unsanctioned, all of this is fine. Just get people coming out to your store. Players, if you're interested, hit up your store. Stores, if you're interested, you can contact Star City Games and get set up for these kits.
Ooze the boss.
Who's the man?
For October, of course, you have to do an ooze, right? Or something Halloween related.
I really like that the ooze is still pretty frightening looking. You know, there's bones and skeletons, but it looks like it's smiling.
It looks relatively happy.
Some childlike wonder.
Not entirely sure what that skull is in the ooze, but I don't really want to ask too many questions.
It's disintegrating a corpse. That's how oozes eat.
Oh,
So
I
it's
didn't know
actually kind of horrifying, but the smile is nice. It juxtaposes the rest of the horror going on in the image.
That's how oozes eat? They disintegrate things?
In Dungeons and Dragons, yeah, if oozes in cubes, they just sort of roll over things and absorb them.
Oh, that's pretty neat.
Well, it's actually terrifying, but if you make it cartoonish enough, it can still be adorable, as you see right here.
And you can get these every week in October at Star City Games Game Night. Horrify your friends. Does the blob classify as an ooze? Like the blob from the movies?
The X-Men movies?
Yeah. Like,
No.
No, not that. Not
Oh.
that blob, you idiot. Are you
I
kidding?
mean, you said the blob. That's pretty vague.
The blob, like the ooze blob that, like, runs around and terrorizes cities, not the blob from X-Men who is clearly a human.
Well, that's why I was confused, and I don't know the other movie you're talking about.
You ever heard of the blob?
Well, I've heard of it as a word in the English language, but the movie you're referring to, no, I've not.
It's just like a big, massive something that's just kind of running rampant over a city.
I don't know. Probably yes.
Okay. I thought you would have known what the blob is. It was a movie that scared me when I was a child.
No, I'm not really that into horror movies, so I don't even know if that's a horror movie, but
I think it does classify as a horror movie, yes.
Yeah.
Because it's a blob that is attacking a city.
well, it could be pretty cartoonish,
it's, not
right?
it's not a comedy.
Well, it could be a comedy.
Well, it's a pretty bad movie.
Like Attack from Mars has some, or whatever that movie's called, some frightening elements, but it's also clearly lighthearted in many respects. Mars Attacks.
Mars Attacks is what you're looking for, yes.
Yeah.
Fair
Seeing
enough.
as though it's a movie I don't know, I don't know how I could be confident it's a horror movie.
Well, I don't know how you could think I was thinking about Fred Dukes,
Ooh.
the Blob.
That was
yeah, I
pretty
know
good.
his real name.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. I know his real
Pretty
name.
good.
Thank you so much.
Pretty good.
My father collects comic books. That's how I know. It is an island to begin things. The snow-covered variety, I think. What a delight.
Trying to get some bluffing on.
I call that the Jim Davis special.
Yeah, Jim Davis showed me his deck today. He's, in fact, playing Burn
Okay. Ooh, okay.
and the snow-covered mountains, and I saw them and I said, you gotta knock this off.
Now he loves it. He loves it.
But I can bluff a scred. No, you can't. No one buys it.
I have one scrying sheets. The null rod's in Bob's hand.
But no vial from Caleb.
Yeah. We're curious if he was going to bring that in or not.
But I'd rather mulligan and have my opponent not have Aether Vial than keep 7 and have my opponent have a vial. So
That's understandable.
it's okay in the scheme of things.
Bob resolving a ponder here after searching up a underground sea off of the flooded strand. I want to see a treasure cruise. You hear me? He's got the mirror charm in his hand. I want to see one of those too. That card's a delight. There's a Lord of Atlantis. Merfolk is getting things rolling. Bob going to draw a card here.
Surprised that Caleb did not lead off with the cavern there.
That's a little surprising.
I think you're pretty happy to get Wasteland in that spot if your opponent has nothing going on turn 1, or they're just cantripping.
I suppose it depends on how many lands he has. There's Tarmogoyf. Hello. A 2-3 at this point. Bob's hand pretty good, though. He's got a Force of Will with a whole bunch of blue cards, of course. You see the Null Rod. We talked about the Demir Charm. There's also a Brainstorm and a Ponder. Here's Cavern of Souls. Is this True Name Nemesis? It is naming Merfolk, and True Nemesis is naming Bob Huang. Nice Tarmogoyf.
So what are Bob's... I mean, he doesn't have Liliana on the Veil in this deck, correct?
I do not see any copies of Liliana the Veil. Normally you look for a card like Engineered Plague, though he does have 2 copies of Agario Charm.
Though, there's going to be a lot of Lords coming.
As there is right now. There's
So-
already one in play.
-1 effects may not get the job done.
Yep. I think Bob might be in some serious trouble now. Certainly slow down his pace of play. He's got a lot to think about. Here's a Ponder to start it up.
Well, his deck is just not that well structured to beat a True Name Nemesis plus a Lord.
Yeah.
There's not a lot going on here.
He's got to kill every Lord that comes into play.
Yeah. And that just gets harder to do because more of them have a habit of showing up.
Yeah. And he's got a relatively Lord-heavy build. You mentioned the 4 Regeries.
Yeah. 4 Lord of Atlantis, 4 Master of the Pearl Trident, 4 Regery. So Caleb's likely to find more of them. They can't be countered.
You see a Wasteland and Tarmogoyf, and it looks like you've been dealing click them on the cards that Bob is taking a look at here. And you can see just how easy it is to fill up the graveyard in Legacy.
Yeah, this is
the fetch lands and the cantrips, and Bob doesn't have any copies of Gataxian Probe in his deck, but that certainly adds to the equation as well. Casting Treasure Cruise for 1 or 2 mana seems laughably easy.
Yeah, this is not even close. Right now it is at odds with the Tarmogoyf, so that's a consideration. But can he fulfill the requirement for Treasure Cruise? He already has.
Yeah. 6 cards in the bin. There's a Wasteland. That'd be pretty good. Let's see what this is going to be. Seems I was cheated. That one's a little scary.
I don't think Bob will use a Force of Will here because of the Null Rod in hand.
Okay.
Though now with the Wasteland in play, there's no guarantee Bob can even cast a Null Rod next turn.
And it's an interesting situation here, right, where I imagine there's a world where Caleb would rather just play the GTA and then surprise him with the Wasteland, but because Daze is a card, he has to lead with the Wasteland first, but playing the Wasteland gives away a little bit of information about, like, hey, one of my lands is probably going to die, so, that's just one of the small things that happens in Legacy quite a bit.
Though I'm sure Caleb's happy to trade the GTA with a Force of Will as well, plus a blue card.
Yeah.
He doesn't need this to win the game, purely optional.
Yeah, what he needs to win the game, I think he has in play, which is Trina Nemesis. And he's ahead on the board. There's an attack for 4. There's Wasteland. This is Null Rod, as you mentioned. This will take care of the GTA, along with Relic of Progenitus and Aether Vial.
Again, this is nice for Bob, but the GTA here is a non-essential element. The bigger problem here is there any way for him to get this True Nemesis off the board? He also can't really raise because it's not clear that he can afford taking 2 points of damage from the Lord of Atlantis on the way back.
Yep. These are all issues.
And, yeah, he has to pump the brakes here and just not even attack with his Tarmogoyf.
There's another Wasteland.
Womp womp.
That's a Silvergill Adept. This is a True Nemesis.
Again, showing respect for Daze.
Yep. Let's see if this is going to resolve. This Wasteland's really going to mess things up. Though this Wasteland is a little bit interesting, right? Because you'd like to color screw them, but then you shut off your island walk. But then again, True Nemesis can't be blocked, so...
Yeah, I don't think that's a huge concern.
Yeah.
Eventually, Bob has to commit another island to the table to win the game at some point.
Yeah,
so
to be able to do actual anything.
You get to that later.
Here's Forcible Moving Brainstorm that's going to go after the Adept. This is a misdirection. Now, the way that this works is misdirection is going to spin the Forcible at the misdirection.
Yes, you can misdirect Force of Will to misdirection, and then the Force of Will counters the misdirection, and then your spell is free to resolve.
Yeah, it's a little complicated, but a Legacy interaction many Legacy players are familiar with.
You cannot use misdirection to just counter spells, but you can use misdirection to counter spells.
Correct. True Nemesis going to come across again for 4. Tarmogoyf's going to get a little bit bigger, but that doesn't matter too much. Bob is in some serious trouble now. He's just got a Wasteland, a very powerful card, of course, but only taps for colorless mana, and there's not a lot he can do about True Nemesis. It's been a while since we've just seen True Nemesis just kind of go to town. There's Silvergill Adept getting in the red zone. And oddly enough, unblocked.
That is bizarre. Bob may be kind of tapping on this game. His hand is uncastable and isn't even good. It was Vendilion Click, Dimir Charm, and a Tarmogoyf. Yeah. So not castable, and wouldn't matter even if he could cast them.
Yeah, this is true. Caleb Neufeld gonna tie things up here against Bob Huang. Merfolk and Sultai Delver going to game number 3 as both these players sit at 3-1.
I don't know if Bob didn't, was kind of checked out of the game or whatever. There are moments that can come up in matches like that where you intentionally make a bad play. Like, I'm not going to block your Silvergill Adept even though I can, to get your opponent to do it the next game when it matters.
Sure.
So I'm not saying that's necessarily what's going on there, but I have run that before of either making a bad play to see if my opponent sees what's going on or allowing myself to make what appears to be a bad play when it doesn't matter, when I'm dead either way, to give my opponent the illusion that I don't know or to try to induce the same mistake in a game where it's actually close.
I have seen some players do that before. It is pretty sweet. Michael Jacob, I don't know if you've heard this story from Nationals, is playing against Sam Stein, and he cast a Demigod of Revenge, and Sam Stein Cryptic commanded it right away, and MJ just put it directly in the graveyard.
Yep.
And then the next turn, he cast a Demigod of Revenge, and Sam Stein Cryptic commanded it, and then MJ quickly pulled his 2 Demigod of Revenges out of the graveyard and put them into play attacking, and Samstein's like, what's happening? And, you know, clearly just the Demigod trick, or the trigger, you know, there's a trigger that goes in the stack with Demigod of Revenge. If you counter before the trigger resolves, you get to get them both. And when you're kind of, this was at Nationals, I think, this was when Mike ended up, this is the one that he won. This is the one because he won.
You gotta be talking like 2008, 2009.
Yep, this is the one that he won. And I remember that was a story that made its rounds, that made its rounds across the tournament floor pretty quickly. And we're just going, MJ the Master, reeling him in. That was definitely a fun one. It's been a long time since I've actually seen that card. That was a really good standard card. It's clearly not going to make an impact in other formats, but I was a pretty big Demigod of Revenge fan.
Yeah.
I like that card. We had some difficulty finding your speed with red cards. You don't like Stigma Lasher. You don't like Hellspark Elemental. You like Demigod of Revenge?
Well, it's a little too expensive,
Yeah.
and I loathe hybrid mana, so.
You don't like Hybrid Mana?
I do not.
Wow. Game designer Patrick. I'm trying to figure out what you do like.
It's not a lot.
Besides Goblin Guide.
I don't even like Goblin Guide.
Okay. That's not true.
I like Goblin Cadets.
No
Just
one
the-
likes Goblin Cadets.
Just the poopiest of them all. You got to work so hard, and the upside's not even that high.
2 mana, 2/1. Or
Yeah.
excuse me, 1 mana, 2/1.
1 mana, 2/1. Good
Single
start.
red, Urza's Saga uncommon.
Good.
When it's blocked, when it blocks or becomes blocked, they get it.
Correct.
This is what you like.
It's hard mode. It's playing on hard mode.
It's impossible. That's the worst card I've ever heard of.
I've won a couple PTQs with that guy.
Were there just no other creatures in the format then? Is that what was happening?
Jackal Pup,
All right.
Mog Fanatic.
Oof.
This is back when creatures stunk, so no one had blockers.
Oh, sure, okay.
Unless they were playing some deck with like Rofelos in it, and then you get, or Rofelos or however it's pronounced.
Rofelos.
And then you could just lava dart that bad boy. Move on.
Oh,
with,
yeah, shoot it right out of the sky.
Move on with your life.
1 to that. A little bit later, 1 to you.
Yeah. Or your second Rofelos, more likely.
Sounds like you've proudly darted some people in your day.
Oh, yeah.
Couple darts for the win. They don't make them like they used to. Lava Dart is the most honest card ever.
Again, not really.
It's a pretty honest burn spell, man.
It is. It's not.
1 damage.
It's definitely way more fair than, say, Fire Blast, but
Yeah, they're a pretty honest card. Verdant Catacomb's getting sacrificed here. Bob's going to go down to 19. We'll see what land he wants to search up.
0 mana removal spells getting cast out of your graveyard. Not the most fair magic. It's not Narcomoeba. It's not Fire Blast, but
I'm okay with sack a mountain, deal 1.
it's not. I'm not saying it's a good rate.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. Here's a Deathrite Shaman. Let's see how Caleb wants to start things off. Looks like he's going to lead out with a Cavern of Souls. Instead of maybe an island. I think I would want, I don't know, I don't have a great look at his hand, but I wouldn't want to play a land that can be wastelanded on 1 if I don't have to.
Correct.
Especially when Cavern's not going to get a Merfolk through. So here's Vile. You can see Bob does have a wasteland in his hand. I think he's considering maybe forcing this. His blue card in hand is a Brainstorm to go along with Tarmogoyf, Abrupt Decay, and that wasteland.
Caleb also had a Relic in his hand, and I think there's an argument for just leading off on Relic.
I kind of wanted to start there.
It's the highest upside play.
Yeah.
But Caleb's shown a lot of discipline playing around Daze, so you'd rather probably get your Relic dazed than a Vial. On top of that, you play the Relic, you use it right away, and if Bob doesn't have another fetch land, well, he's down to mana.
Yeah. Oh, the Relic's good. Looks like another copy of Abrupt Decay is the draw. See, there's the wasteland. Bob's hand definitely has some power, and Brainstorm can really tie the room together. Just depends on if he wants to cast it now or maybe wait a little later.
Also, these Abrupt Decays, they are good, but they're a little bit scary. Keep in mind, Caleb did show misdirection last game.
This is true. Goyf sitting at a 1-2 right now. Now Deathrite Shaman into the red zone. Neufeld's going to go down 19. Vile going to take up to 1.
That's probably the least legible die that anyone has ever tried to put on camera.
Yeah, I think so.
The four-sided die.
I don't even know why those get used.
Again, it's Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, of course it is. It's a relic. This one might be worth fighting over.
Although it's also kind of rough if you're in Bob's seat to fight over a relic of Progenitus.
Absolutely it is.
It's the squeeze.
He's going to fight over it. Force Will, removing Brainstorm.
Oh, no.
Oh, the Curse Catcher.
Oh, no.
Oh, what a beating. Oh, what a giant beating.
So that's a turn.
Well, Tarmogoyf gets bigger.
For now. Subject to change.
Yep. That is a hammer ding dong. You probably fire Wasteland off too, right? Just because, like, well,
or you can just
like
you can just relic. You can just relic him, right?
Let's get that Wasteland out of here. Let's get that Tropical Island out of here. Excuse me, with the Wasteland. That's the best Curse Catcher's ever been.
Oh,
big draw there from Bob. Underground Sea. Now he can cast Abrupt Decay. The big question is, what do you decay?
And also, are you really worried about misdirection? Because that's
misdirection is the biggest beating ever.
That could be the hammer lock on this game. It's already gone off to a pretty rough start for Bob. I think he has to because there's no guarantee he's going to be able to cast his Abrupt Decay turns from now if Caleb decides to sacrifice the relic.
Yep.
So I feel like his hand's almost forced.
Yeah, activate the relic. See who he's targeting with this. There's definitely some merit to targeting yourself with the relic to remove the Curse Catcher. That removes a creature from the graveyard. That's what he's going to do. So bye-bye Curse Catcher. Going to activate the Deathrite Shaman, get the land out of there. And now the relic is gone. So that Tarmogoyf should be a little bit bigger. And a little bit more damage should have been dealt. So we'll see if we can get that Tarmogoyf die. Actually, no, we have, excuse me, we have instant land and artifact. So same size, take it back. No sorceries down there. Here's a Master of the Pearl Trident through the cavern. So Tarmogoyf still a 3/4. We are all good on that thing.
And this was the cost of Caleb not just immediately going ahead and firing off that relic.
Yeah.
Because Wasteland versus the relic, it probably cuts off a mana the same way. You're either destroying a land or removing lands for a Deathrite Shaman activation. Plus you're drawing a card. Plus the Tarmogoyf is no longer a factor.
Here's a Ponder. Treasure Cruise among the cards. There's also a Wasteland in there too. Again, Bob's card in hand is a copy of Abrupt Decay. This game has been very interesting. Looks like he might keep him, at least considering it.
Well, he also has to do a graveyard check too because he's locked into drawing a Treasure Cruise.
Mm-hmm. It looks like he took a Wasteland. Here comes Tarmogoyf. 4/5 now. This is a Vial. This, not quite sure. Yes. Master of the Pearl Trident. We're going to see a Wasteland take care of the cavern. This is actually a racing situation now, though.
Yes.
Let's see what Caleb draws. He's going to leave the Vial at 2. Draws an island for the turn. This is an attack for 6. So now things get really interesting, right? Going to play an island. I believe Neufeld's hand is Force of Will, Force of Will.
That looks right to me.
I'm going to draw. Copy of Demir Charm. Not great in this spot. Tarmogoyf's still pretty big.
Curious to see what Bob wants to do with this Abrupt Decay at this point.
Yeah, me too.
Since Caleb didn't move up to 3, you can be pretty sure that there's no copy of True Nemesis or Reejery in the hand right now, which would make me inclined to Abrupt Decay one of the Masters, which is what Bob concludes as well.
Goyf's going to get a little bit bigger. In this situation, if I'm Caleb, yeah, I want to move that up to 3 in case I do draw True Nemesis.
Yeah, he can cast any 2.
Yep.
So he wants to make sure he can deploy 3 as well.
Does not actually play the Lord of Atlantis. That's a little bit surprising.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you can't afford to play around days.
Yeah, I don't think holding it does very much because, you know, if he draws a land to be able to cast a Lord, what good is that? So, okay, I played around days, but I mean, that means I drew a land. A land's not very helpful. But you can see in Bob's deck, there's definitely a tension between Treasure Cruise and Tarmogoyf.
Well, part of the problem here is he's playing against a deck that's pretty graveyard light. A lot of decks in Legacy are going to cooperate. They're going to leave your Tarmogoyf big, and you can use your graveyard as a resource.
Sure.
This is one of the matchups where Caleb doesn't have a lot of spells. He has no fetch lands. He's not helping out Bob at all. So the graveyard is a limited resource for Bob.
That does make sense.
And that makes pushing on this Treasure Cruise really risky, because if Caleb's able to counter it, well, you've probably lost some amount of size off your Tarmogoyf and some utility on your Deathrite Shaman. This is part of the reason I was a little concerned with Bob keeping the Treasure Cruise off that Ponder in the first place. I think that was a shuffleable Ponder, because I think Treasure Cruise might be too risky for Bob to cast.
Well, it's time to get blocking. You let that 5 damage through. You're in some real trouble. It's time to go on a cruise, it looks like. Maybe not. He's just going to pass the turn back. Neufeld will draw a card. He's looking for True Name. There's a Mutavault. And now here is a Master. Excuse me, a Lord of Atlantis.
Looks like Bob just going to hold steady here.
Yeah, I think we might just see Dimir Charm take care of that. Yep. See Caleb taking a look. We'll do the same. A lot of modes on that bad boy. It's going to get Force of Willed. The mode that was being used is, I believe, destroy target creature with power 2 or less. The SWAT.
So that was, I felt, also somewhat risky use of Dimir Charm there because of the misdirection that Caleb's shown. I think at this stage of the game, I would have just started activating Deathrite Shaman, try to close the game out.
Drain him out that way.
Don't bother casting spells that potentially walk into misdirection.
Especially when you have the information that he has it in his deck.
Right, it's too risky, I think. Because by the looks of things, it doesn't seem like Caleb can stop the Tarmogoyf.
Unless he feels True Name.
I would just want to get into a damage race situation as much as I could.
Scalding Tarn's going to search up a copy of Tropical Island. Now it's time to take the cruise. We're going to delve away a bunch of cards. The goal is to leave the graveyard as intact as possible so that Tarmogoyf is still large. 2 and 3. 2 Tarmogoyfs and a Scalding Tarn are the draw. Get familiar with it. It's going to be here for a while.
Yeah. Like forever, probably.
Yeah, probably. Here comes Santa Claus. Quick block. Don't think there are any more lands in the graveyard here. Oh, now there is. Wasteland at Mutavault. Activate this Deathrite Shaman. Get the Wasteland out of the graveyard. Actually, get the Mutavault out of the graveyard, excuse me. Play another Tarmogoyf, which is gigantic, and that is going to do it. Bob Huang's going to win this match over Caleb Neufeld. 2-1. Saltide Delver with Treasure Cruise wins. And now for Bob, who's on to 4-1. We'll see if he can go back-to-back here.